poet he's going to read is not only a wonderful poet, but also one of Brookdale's own. He is Professor Michael Broek. He teaches in the English department. And he is the author of Refugees, which is a winner of the Kinley Gensler Award from Alice James' books. He also has 2 chapbooks, The Logic of You and The Amputation Artist. He has poetry and essays that have been published widely, places such as the American Poetry Review, the Literary Review, Drunken Boat. If you're in the poetry world, to give you an equivalent, getting something in sort of the American Poetry Review was kind of the equivalent of getting an article published in Rolling Stone. I mean, this is what every poet wants to be. As well, he has received fellowships from MacDowell Arts Colony, a scholarship to the Breadloaf Writers Conference, grants, and more. He edits the online journal of poetry called Me, the Magazine of Literature and Libations. He holds an MFA in poetry from Goddard College and a PhD in American Literature from Essex University in the UK. Michael's book of poems is divided into 3 sections. And I think it's challenging work in that it is exploring issues of responsibility, issues of violence, issues of our common humanity, and also of love. The poems ask that when a refugee washes onto your shores, what will you do? What's your obligation? What's your responsibility? What kind of person are you? I think the poems are deeply moral, not in a preaching sort of way, not in a religious sort of way, but instead, like all truly good political poetry, rather than dictate or preach, the work vividly brings forward contemporary issues for the reader to experience and come to his or her own conclusion. I think with so many things going on in the world, a poet like Michael Broek is vital to our conversation about how we're going to continue. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Brookdale's own Michael Broek.
The first section I'll read from is called The Cloud and the Counterpane. And they alternate back and forth in the book between cloud poems and counterpane poems. Cloud poems tend to take place in the city and tend to be grounded in some historical realities and politics. And the counterpane poems take as their central metaphor the counterpane from the chapter of the same name in Moby Dick. And in that novel, the counterpane is a quilt that covers the bodies of Ishmael and Queequeg as they're lying together in bed. And for me, it's a metaphor about interconnectedness. It's about love. It's about patterns, if you think of how quilts are made as well. The Cloud, 1. City of never-ending gates, city of evidence collected in barrels, DNA the 100-year storm left, waterlogged, along Kingsland Avenue in Greenpoint, Brooklyn muck. City of Sutton Hoo, of golden breastplates, punk teeth, false hair. City of candied orange slices and sushi that preserved, that raw, that saturated color. Inside the steam-mouthed kitchen, city of birth, documents floating down to Jersey, city of preserved women hanging from fat rafters like antique brooms, city of preserved men shut inside glass cases on soft black sheets, city of gods, city of devils, city of can't tell the difference. This particular counterpane poem makes a reference to crazy quilts, which were quilts that actually had no pattern in them. As the name suggests, they were designed however the quilt maker happened to be feeling that day. The counterpane, 5. My head is full of you, and the wind has picked up your scent, bringing you back to me. My head aches from feeling, and the lights along the sidewalk grow yellow with their simple being in the face of all their glassy eyes have seen. Backpacks walking into distance and shopping carts, carriages and scooters, people too, people not in cities on maps, people in each other's arms. Along the blue-black walkway beside benches crying with sweat are her and him and dogs tethered to their masters, sometimes many in the hands of one, walking with his head down. In my brain today is hurt I had not known, I wanted and wouldn't give up. I had finished the quilt, so I went down and sat by the smellless river, just a frosted gray strip of moon laid down between cities that see each other across the river but do not touch. These unplanned quilts are called crazy, patches pieced with no pattern, random except for intent. The city on the other side of the river looks like the city on this side of the river, except I looked and someone looked back. The poems are composed in this way because I was trying to weave together many different issues, histories, times, the personal and the universal. This poem, The Cloud 2, includes reference to what is called the Arecibo message, which was a radio signal sent out into space that the purpose of which was to try to communicate with extraterrestrials. It included the DNA, in binary form of human beings. So if anyone read it, they could see what we were like. And there was at one point a signal that was heard back one time. And you'll hear, it's a series of numbers and letters. And the scientist who received this message sitting at the telescope just circled it and wrote "wow" next to it. And so it became known as the "wow" message. And it's never been heard again. The Cloud 2. Well, there were people, not on any maps, but in cities on the maps, in statisticians' shop drawers, shedding citizens' data onto squared tile floors, and in the servers, ever-spooling numbers, circumnavigating solar systems, since numbers were light and seemingly infinite, space, and on Tuesday at 5 p.m., the Milky Way is finite, while at 5:01 there is more. Encore deux. In bodega storage closets and police precinct bathrooms where there loom broomstick endings, fractions, systolic, diastolic. In private club parlors where countries meet histories written under invaders' thumbs, and numbers men gobble trays, tables where eyes are multipliers, cities, fissures, fissions, fractures. The ethics of loving are complex, if we can call this loving at all. The 4:05 p.m. from Newark arrives at Penn, not at all, but solidly within dream, nightmare, and imagined futures, arriving softly across bridges, leering brightly in breezeway corners and last century elevators, crossing each story's horizontal steel, demarking each light-pierced foregone lifeline, water line, food line, power line, line up, line of defense. Graph paper, the Arecibo message, double helical human, the extraterrestrial signal, 6EQUJ5, forward and backward. Wow. To me, this technique of being able to go back and forth between these kind of two texturally different, tonally different works, I thought would really give the reader a breather and also aesthetically create tension between those two kinds of poems and between the voices. The counterpane, too. The pattern is here. The shop is mine. Hours past. Hand along, nape of neckline, fabric which choosing chooses me. Tools, scissor, machine, spool, blade, and rule. What happened last night along the roadway home? What happened last star-splintered year manning the checkpoint? Or in that secret tree split open in the garden? Pattern is here. That pattern I wasn't meant to have. Stitches organizing sky, constellations pointing toward futures I didn't know was there, plural. Plural equals slow loves, perambulations of dresses around the garden, market flowers patterning the day. Do you have this? Is there one of these? What I go finding is never what I leave having found. You. Dear shopkeeper, stalker, and prophet, I came today imagining just where I was going, and you suggested new ideas. The Cloud 3. Tal Afar, Iraq, city of blood stars patterning soldiers' boots, splintered windshield wheeling about the lieutenant's head, firing the warning shots, flashing the hand signaling stop. The Arecibo message, humans cringing in the statistician's office corner, Samar Hassan officially unrecorded. All these blossoming terrors and wrapped arms too, sequestered, buried, held inside chests, inside eyes, mouths, groin, and fingers sliding inside you, kisses on lips long having given up, forgetting love. Samar, beauty, exploding city, sweet refugee, these are our bodies, wet and terrible teeth, marks and flanks, fecund and monstrous, rebar pierced through the neck, dear, you dragged under the bush, devoured meat, which no one loves, no one forgives, everyone forgives. Desire, you lover, you city, absent your why. Devoured behind the tree in a garden, shadowed with light, a tree that will outlast us. Man, who has no analog, silly, really, he has been in charge for so long. The Counterpane 6. There is no soup today, only bread without crust, the impossible soft middle. The baker's hand forming a loaf rising like a body, and the skin delicious and thin. So much Adam's apple biting there. We could live on such violations for centuries. What did it mean to snip the tenuous threads of decorum, doing what we are told? For how long? Really? One day there is no soup, the next no bread, your slim neck in my hands, the rising, the falling, the split second between. That's the revolution. Ordering is weird for me. It's a really difficult process. You create all these things that you love, or that movie or you think are effective, but then it's like you got to put the 50 pages together in a way that also makes sense to a reader. And so it becomes, in some ways, one long poem where all the pieces speak to each other. It's like a whole nother, to me, it's a whole nother way of thinking about the work that you don't have to do necessarily until you get to that point. And then it's another challenge. The Cloud 8. A topography of city reveals monuments to Babylon ticking through the pavement. Glass, levers, slaves sleeping upright in dim corners, and tunnels sniffed by rats stealing gold. Pharaoh, mayor, architect, embalmer, saint. Atop the thwarting bull, Wall Street, a ballerina en pointe. A bronze man reading literature dumped from the free library. A card catalog on written, occupied. Blue horizontal lines, margin at the top categorizing city. She will go out in time, will go out into time, hiding even her embers. I love you even as love refuses names, refuses to be named, because it is refugee, my sweet untold ballerina, Hassan. The Cloud 9. Sometimes there is no edge. Just sheets of cloud, statistics underneath, dying in each other's arms. Equations exchanging messages on the backs of napkins and stars. Sometimes there are no clouds. Nothing to cup hands around, color pure and tenderless, a message readerless, the cobalt blue bed sheets after you've gone, creaseless and empty, 7 million drops walking city, merging into cloud. Falling, emptied, collected, rising again into 5-story walk-ups. Bleeding mold, the 100-year storm left. Documents signaling life strewn about the apartment. And underneath the coffee cup, a note you've left, encoding our next coming, our next Sutton Hoo, treasure sunk in Greenpoint, Brooklyn muck, our unearthing. Sometimes genetics explodes from alien directions and Samar Hassan crouches in corners. Sometimes there is life where none is wanted, but not in this house. I want this and this and this, but not all of these things want to be sewn together. The pattern counter to plan is love. I don't plan a lot. I read really widely, and so I have all of this material in my mind, but I don't sit out and sit down and make an outline, for instance. But I work intuitively. This refers to a ship called the Golden Venture that ran ashore off Rockaway, so locally here, just up the street, in 1993, and it was carrying, among other things, a boatload of refugees from China who were seeking political asylum here. This was during the Clinton administration. And there had been much acrimony between China and the US at the time. Many jumped into the water, 10 of them died as they were trying to swim to shore. And you can look this up and see pictures of them on the beach in the middle of the night, being given CPR and so forth. And Clinton didn't know what to do with them because to grant them asylum immediately would have angered the Chinese. And so they were sent to jail in York, Pennsylvania. And there they stayed for years while their asylum cases were being decided. These poems were written from the point of view not of one of the refugees, I didn't want to appropriate their voice, but actually written from the point of view of someone more like myself. An ESL adjunct professor at a community college who's called in to translate for one of the men who has been jailed. So these are written mostly from his voice. The Golden Venture, 1. The law demands a representative. Asked to translate, I cannot translate myself. My family came for the Gold Mountain, the California gold rush. When the earthquake destroyed the records, there were no records. My grandfather became a paper son. His slot was bought. My father moved east to New York, found work, then west to York, built his wonderful garden. He said Americans can't eat enough Chinese. The law demands a defendant understand the charges. I barely know his dialect, this refugee, Sheng Chao Chen, not Manchurian, not Cantonese. I was born in York, where the Underground Railroad ran. Old York, I guess. The Lincoln Highway travels through town, a ribbon tying two coasts. The law demands habeas corpus. The law demands a body to be prosecuted. Messiah College in Mechanicsburg is my alma mater. My degree is in English. China is my Epcot, where no one drowns and everyone buys souvenirs signaling happiness. The law makes demands of the body, but never of the soul. If interpretation is what you need, then that's more than I was hired to provide. The Golden Venture 2. I write in the report, the Golden Venture freighter foundered and Sheng Chao Chen was dragged to shore, 18 years wet, illegal, lungs split with salt, off Queens, off Rockaway, off ship, 10 jumped over the side into the screws. I would do it again, he said, though the water was cold, he said, as was the beach where nearly nude girls, chests crushed under latex hands trying to restart hearts, were muled from Fujian to America, vomiting sea. I write in the margins what the screws do to you, what the lack of love does to you. Every law does to you. Every single law signaling imagination failed. The Golden Venture 3. On my shelf, I never find the book I am looking for. There is another in a different language, with another spine, another way to cover what's underneath. Alphabetization is a border fence holding out in chaos. Chinese has no tense. Sheng Chao Chen wants to learn the language of buying and selling. I adjunct at the community college, English as a second language. Proper use of the comma and the full stop. Proper frame for an argument. Proper attitude toward the opposing view. An attitude toward anger. Errors of article and agreement. How to create great forts of words, impenetrable to experience of the actual. I choose a dictionary and the Pilgrim's Progress. The proper use of the subjunctive requires a lifetime to learn, and even then, unnecessary, this counterfactual condition. The Golden Venture 5. I write in the report, Sheng Chao Chen watches the prison vigils outside slitted windows, folding origami hands from donated GQ mags. My friend dragged me out the sea, he said. I write in the margins, how many folds, right angles shaped in laps against rounded bars form palms meet. Hand arching up the back, hand praying in upstate York, which buys the refugees to populate the jails it built, awaiting the ships crashing down on far Rockaway to come, drowning to come, border crosser come, criminal walking 5 nights against desert come, the profitable refugees to York. My friend dragged me out the sea, he said, come the sea. I write to make myself think, and I hope someone else might think along with me, but I try not to think, except maybe while I'm revising, but certainly not in the first process of creation about what others are going to take away from this. The Golden Venture 7. What I translated. I had dreamed you were the wide, uncorrupted beach. I had dreamed you were the heat I had stolen away to find, and you did not toss me back. Lucky Golden Venture, lucky me. You wore that dress I did not care, and your hair in its impossible tangles opened just for me, parolee. I thought I had the choice to love, stupid me. The ship it chose and the sea. The moonlight does not care if I drown, or you, if I drink seawater or clouds, night or you, waiting in your dimly lit room rocked by storms for me, the bed rising and falling with the sea, choosing refugee me. The Golden Venture 8. What the papers say. Death of the freighter Golden Venture, towed down off Boca Raton, mouth of stones, mouth of ship's bones, rats caught in the trap. The Coast Guard, the water cannons making her sink, making her grave, making her a sight for divers swimming through her belly. Within sight of the Gold Coast, laid to rest in artificial reef, I am not dead. Inked in the skin's creases, washed away. What my dreams say. Who does not want a new land, new city, clean, like God-smelling tree for the first time? That is what you are to me. Us, clear, sea, unctuous lover, contraband. City screams its all too human arms, and Sheng Chao Chen, double helical human, pinches dumplings along Brooklyn Battery, singing subways and Senando Sen, great underground tunnels, crossing and recrossing, exiting everywhere. So, thank you very much.
I'm a bit of an introvert. At a big university, I could have been lost in the crowd. But Brookdale helped me find my voice. My advisors and professors believed in me. By graduation, I had founded my own club and completed an internship with JP Morgan Chase. My name is Justin Melendez, and I came to Brookdale to learn about business. I never imagined I'd learn so much about myself.
My daughter was born premature, and the hospital's respiratory therapist saved her life. When the economy crashed, we moved back to New Jersey for my husband's career, but nobody was hiring drama teachers. So I joined the respiratory therapy program at Brookdale. It's a great field with job security, and you can be there for people who really need you. My name is Joriel Miller, and I came to Brookdale to change my career. I never imagined I could help save a life.
When I was divorced, I needed to rediscover who I was. I had no career or college degree. My divorce attorney was so supportive. Working with her helped me realize I have what it takes for a career in law. I joined the paralegal program at Brookdale, and I got a great base to build a career on. Now I'm working as a paralegal at Ansel, Grimm & Aaron, and I love it. I'm Michelle McCarran, and I went to Brookdale for a new start. I never imagined I would find my calling.
Ilyse is a poet and journalist. She is the author of Small Hours, which I don't know if you can see it, but just has this beautiful painting on the cover by, I believe it a Mexican surrealist painter, although I may be wrong about that, she'll correct me. What's the name? That, yes. She also has another book called The Gravity of Falling, which is a chapbook that came out in 2006. She earned her master's in creative writing from Syracuse University and a PhD in feminist and post-colonial British literature from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And I just realized both of the poets tonight have PhDs from a British university.
And I didn't exchange your Essex, Michael.
Which is where his school was. Wow, what a small world. Her poetry has appeared in numerous national publications, including Crab Orchard Review, the Cincinnati Review, Crazy Horse, Stone Canoe Rattle, too many others to name, as well as being anthologized. She has published numerous reviews and essays about contemporary American and Scottish poetry, both in the United States and abroad. And she teaches at Valencia College and lives in Orlando with her husband, the poet and memoirist Brian Turner. What I love about Ilyse's work is its incredible range. Her poems can cover an awful lot of ground. For example, in one poem, Match Girls, it starts with factory girls in the 19th century, and then it moves back to workers in the 18th century, and then it moves back to a Chinese emperor, and then it swings all the way around back up to now. I mean, that's a lot of time to cover in a poem. She does it incredibly well, incredibly well. Her work connects also the historical with the personal. I also asked her what provokes a poem for her, and she said outrage. Outrage at what we are doing to our planet, outrage at the injustices and the corruption in our culture, outrage at the obliviousness of our leaders, that this to her is the call to her art. And whether it be family history or the history of her people, her powerful poems, provoked by outrage, with humor at times, with empathy always, reinforce the idea, though, that we are all connected and that the past is still with us today, just as it is and will be as we all shape our collective futures. So it was with great joy that I introduce Ilyse Kusnetz.
First poem, Match Girls. I was really intrigued to find out that an ancient emperor from China thought he could achieve eternal life by consuming mercury. At the same time, that's something that a lot of the workers in America were poisoned with. When I first wrote this poem, this was a time when unions were really being torn apart in a lot of places, and I thought, if people could look back and see, what it was like without them and think about that maybe a lot of people who dismissed unions would maybe think twice. Match Girls. In the factories of America during the 19th century, girls hired to make matches would dip the match ends into a chemical vat, then lick the tips to make them stiff. Phosphorus vapor filled the air, a poison about which no one warned them. So when their teeth fell out and their jaws rotted like bad fruit, it was too late. It was not the first time such things happened. Bent at their workstations, women in the 18th century cured ladies' hats with mercury. Their legacy, blushing, aching limbs, a plague of rashes, parchment-thin pages of sloughed skin, curled and cracked, minds deranged. They could not know they shared a fate with Emperor Qin Shi Huang, who, seeking eternal life, swallowed pills laced with mercury. He built the Great Wall and unified China, then outlawed all religions not sanctioned by the state, burned treatises on history, politics, and art. Scholars who dared possess such things, he buried alive. His body lies in a vast mausoleum guarded by a terracotta army. Of the factory girls, mouths opening below earth, their bodies burning like forbidden books, we know almost nothing. What motivates you, not just for the moment, but what motivates you to keep going on with writing? There have been about 100 million times I've said to myself in my life, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's not working. I just got to stop. This is torture. And somehow, maybe it's stubbornness, you know, to say, no, I have something to say and I need to say it. And if I don't say it, I'm going to implode. That feeling of, I've just got to get this out. I'm going to read a poem called Small Hours. And it's about my mother who, she died of breast cancer. It spread and she died back in 2004. And but it's also about my relationship with her. You know, when you write, you're writing about a subject, but there's also this subtext there, this tension that's driving the piece of writing. And it's about more than just what's on the surface. It's like what the engine of the piece is. And so I would say on the subject, on the surface, this poem is about my mother's cancer, and the engine driving it is the relationship that we had. So it's called Small Hours. I was shocked that last Thanksgiving to see my mother, lifelong enemy of stray threads, smudged faces, raised voices, in pajamas at the dining room table, not wearing her wig. Hair a scatter of pin feathers stuck to her scalp. It was the last night she spent at home, my father refusing to admit her decline, and so when he urged her farther, a little farther, she collapsed onto the bathroom floor. Still, he wouldn't dial the ambulance. I remember her long ago advice to me. It takes fewer muscles to smile than it does to frown. As if unhappiness were only a facial expression. The heart's desire wafting along a flower-lined path of least resistance. Weeks later, I stood beside her hospital bed. Waking, she'd suck orange slices, clown smiles. Tongue so parched, each word she tried to utter stuck in her mouth like driftwood. Though once during the small hours, I heard her sigh to herself, oh well. For me, sadly, you know, I told you my mother passed away from cancer, and I found out about just over 2 years ago that I had cancer. So it was a weird moment. in this book, I only wrote one poem about that, and I thought I'd read it because it felt like today when I saw my childhood home, I thought, you traveled such a long way in life, you know, and there are certain moments that change you forever. Holding Albert Einstein's hand. The corpse tree full of wasps, their razoring wings outside my hospital window, in 2s and 3s returning. And so it goes, and so it goes. A woman knows what a woman knows. Words for losing places. Hiraeth, Sodad, Morinha, Dor. The 4 chaise lounges of the apocalypse wait for us on the sands, knowing time is a rope, a deck of cards, an empty glass. This place to sit by the ocean, watch sanderlings run from the waves, the long-fingered light of late afternoon. Fear of disintegration hollows out my bones. I am becoming bird. A sparrow flew into the house, could not find its way out. How it knocked, pinioned fist against the ceiling. Years ago, my heart was trapped like that. And how the starlight traveled toward me, though I was already dead. Radiation to the marrow, pharmacon swirling in my veins. Everything dies. Driving toward Venus, I want to hear what the sweet executioner says. My bones like burning matchsticks. Sometimes when I wake, I'm shaping the world with my hands. Sometimes when I sleep, the world shapes me. Once I was energy hiding inside the light or the shadow of light. Love rooted us together, exponential. After, we spoke in tongues. Our fingers cupped the universe like water. This is called Hitler's Alarm Clock, 1945. And written on a stone marker outside the house in Branna where Hitler lived as a boy, is written, there's a stone engraved with the saying, "For peace, freedom, and democracy. Never again fascism. Millions of dead admonish." No one saw the Jewish baker snatch it from its bedside perch and slip it into his overcoat. Hitler's childhood room preserved down to a pair of gabardine short trousers hanging over his chair. My uncle carried that clock the rest of the war, woke each morning to its empty crowing, then took it back to Brooklyn. 3 years later, his toddler sons, twin prodigies, stole it from his drawer, dismantling the mechanism beyond repair. Every wheel and cog and spring spread across the living room table like airplane wreckage he'd seen, a senseless array of parts, forlorn as disassembled countries, or memories whose narratives lie lost and scattered like ash. Ideas occur to me and I want to brood on them. I want to kind of brood to the point where I feel that readiness inside. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like strike then or never. Archival footage. Bodies piled like lumber, tottering bodies withered to bone, lampshades fashioned of human skin, some displaying tattoos. Shrunken head paperweights, bisected heads preserved and suspended in transparent resin, neatly labeled 2 halves of the Jew brain. Local townspeople trucked in. Now you can't tell the world you didn't know. One woman presses a handkerchief to mouth and nose. A man dizzily cradles his chin. Look closely. You can see history rooting in their bodies, the horror of it pulling out their tongues. Just clear your head of any voice that says stop or don't write that or maybe you should change that. Just go, 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 go. As far as that wave will take you. Jesus is risen. Every Easter, when I observe the sign in my neighbor's yard, I can't help but imagine Jesus as a loaf of bread, kneaded to doughy perfection, his flesh suffused with yeast and covered by the robe of a towel. Because such transformations must happen in secret, in the darkness of a cave or a bowl. It's called a Hampshire field at sunset. Wheels of hay, sun-fired, each a sealed universe, replete, imperturbable. Shadows are sarsens here, autumn spilled on the ground, winter gathering in the sky. Come to bed tonight. Curl your body into mine. From next year's furrows, the braided gold will rise. Time enough, my love, to exhale the breath we did not know we were holding for this world. You have to imagine for this poem a museum in which exhibits are frozen in time and they're different explosions and they're miniaturized explosions of enormous events, and you can kind of see them in a 3D way and kind of trace, look at the epicenter and see out from where that goes. So. 1, the Big Bang. In this exhibit, a universe explodes into being. Exquisite miniature in a hovering stasis bubble, viewable from every possible angle. At the far left edge, 8 billion years into the future, our radio telescopes press their ears to the sky, so finely tuned they can hear the sound a single atom makes. Its cavitation in space, loosing into the nascent universe, a D note 20 octaves above your cochlea's register. Here is an atom that will later become part of you, then me, handed down through generations, through millennia, to those we love, to those who carry on after us. Here nebula are born, their jewels and precious metals strewn across the vacuum of space-time, the bright curving horns of protostars. So much light and the billowing diaphanous robes of elements swelling in waves, stars pinwheeling outward, the Milky Way drowning in an ocean of sparkling matter. Here is where our heart fires start, the moment everything is entangled in everything else. The singularity's inky nothingness from which everything in a glory of harmonic dissonance bursts. Invisible plumes of energy swirling from the blown-out center, spun filaments of dark matter along which galaxies are strung like pearls, the thrum of existence inside each atom, protons, electrons, neutrons, quarks all whirling in their orbits, blinking in and out of sight like fireflies on a summer evening. The first atoms fusing into molecules, chains of hydrocarbons, amino acids, proteins, complexity the universe itself cannot resist. As somewhere, illuminated by the spent hull of its embryonic shell, the first life is born. 2. Extinction level event, 65 million years BCE. Captured when an asteroid the size of Manhattan impacted the Earth, annihilating the dinosaurs and most of life on Earth except for a few highly adaptable mammalian species. This, the colossal dust cloud rising from the impact site to cover an entire planet, shutting out its sun. Flames engulfing the world. Goodbye, Brontosaurus. Goodbye, Triceratops. Goodbye, Tyrannosaurus Rex. From here, you can see the long necks of Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus sagging onto the ground, their massive bodies melting into tar pits transformed by a million bubbling years to fossil fuel. Over here, a group of little animals cowering in the understory of a jungle. Our ancestors, not yet recognizable as human, possessing the intelligence of a cat or a dog. Disaster is in our DNA, the way every creation myth cradles a tale of destruction within it. Things were good, then not. In the old myths, paradise is always ruined. A colossal snake or this ashen snow falling over the small living creatures, and the bodies of the dead will someday burn again. 3. The first nuclear test explosion, White Sands, New Mexico. These shadows of buildings from a fake town, the glassy expanse of melted sand, a sucking in of oxygen as the plutonium explosion furls into its classic mushroom shape. Eat of its flesh and die. Here the bunkered men unhuddle, realizing they've done it, unbalanced the world's equation. At first, a terrible silence. Then the sound of men whooping, slapping each other on the backs. Their tongues sizzle with the heat of 1,000 suns. Note how one man rubs his eyes hard, tries not to look at the fake people, all vaporized. His caterpillar eyebrows frown while his sensitive mouth opens as if he wants to scream. His skull is shaped like the blade of an axe, and there's a rushing noise in his head. Press 201 on your audio guide if you wish to hear him say in a voice like cracking ice, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Toward the edge of the explosion, 2 Japanese cities, their blackened ruins. Further out, similar clouds shroud Bikini Atoll, parts of Russia, France, China. The smoke billows so far it engulfs all the continents and oceans, the entire planet finally disappearing under a radioactive smog. 4. Twin Towers. The plane plowing into the building, the impossible outline of the plane inside the building, the plane limned in brilliant light. An optical illusion eyewitnesses and people peering at televisions and storefront windows and living rooms report, wondering if by some miracle space-time suddenly blossomed into a new dimension, so that plane and building exist simultaneously, superimposed but whole. Then the people falling. And other people will always be falling, on TV and in our imaginations, falling from a building into history. Here we know they are dead, but there they are still falling, and our eyes are still burning image after burnt image into happening, this is happening, unable to comprehend that the falling shapes are people, though here at the edge of falling is the beginning of horror. Emergency workers covered in choking dust will always be trying to rescue the fallen, and sometimes fall themselves then and after. Families will fall into grief. Very far away from them, not quite at the edge, are the wars where other people still falling fight. Even those who do not fight are falling into the future or never to rise. And somewhere in the desert, by the Tigris or the Euphrates, north of Baghdad or south of Fallujah, is you. We are not yet falling. The RPG launched, hitting the fuel tank of your Stryker, an explosion deflected downward to the dusty road, and even so it lifts the 19-ton vehicle and throws you from a rear air guard hatch into the troop hold, the arc of the falling, the trajectory that spared your life so that here, far away from those who are falling, we could meet and fall together. 5. The double flame. The sheets I clenched between my fingers, the touch and taste of you, the scent of hotel soap and the gleam of light from the moon as I showered, slicking back my hair, the curve of your body, the weight of your arm on my hip as we slept. Visitors squint to view the eternity-stoked fire, the double flame of crystallized intensity at its impossible center. Its afterimage floating on their retinas like the shadow of an embryo. And this is the one you never see coming. Everything entangled. The atom split. The universe born.